Hello, everyone, and welcome to Evolving Enneagram's Interspiritual Podcast. I'm Rev Nhien, founder of Evolving Enneagram, and I am so excited to be here with Dr. Khaled El Sherbini of Enneagram Egypt. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about him in a second, but before I do, I want to tell you what we're here for. We are here today for our Transformation by Type interview series, in which I have the honor and blessing of interviewing Enneagram professionals who are actively working their spiritual journey or path. And the amazing thing is, normally we get to talk to teachers from around the world about their actual teachings, right? What they teach in the Enneagram. But today we get to share like the personal story behind like the why of why a teacher might teach the Enneagram, especially from a spiritual perspective. So I feel very honored to have my friend and colleague here with us today. So I want to launch before I even let him talk. So I want to launch in with sharing my understanding, and you tell me if I'm wrong about like how we met. So my understanding, the connection that I remember the most is that you and I, Dr. Khaled, were on the IEA. For those of you who are new, that's the International Enneagram Association. They have a monthly live session, and basically they picked Enneagram spiritual teachers from around the world to be on a panel on the Enneagram and spirituality. And so we were on this panel together in December of 2021, I believe. Yeah. And so I think that was my first like real kind of connection with you. And then I had the blessing of going to Egypt in January of just that following year, where Dr. Khaled was just this astounding host. He and his wife, Natalia, took us out for dinner and these just amazing conversations really about spirituality.
And the lovely evening we had together with the lovely group also, yeah.
True. So there was a secret hotel room gathering of some of our favorite people together. And okay, so we could share now. So Dr. Khaled identifies, I'll let you speak in a sec, identifies as a sexual type 5, right? I identify as a sexual 3. And, like we go into this group gathering and we wear everyone else out. They leave. And it's just the two of us talking spirituality into the night. So it was amazing. Hey, I never shared this publicly, but I want to say this, which is that I was getting ready to present on the Enneagram and death in Egypt at the time, right? And I was brand new to the community there in Cairo. And I just want to honor that night, our conversation about the Enneagram and death and like my presentation, it totally transformed the way I even taught it at that. Like I changed my whole presentation, and people there only saw what I did. They didn't see your support behind that. So I want to honor that our conversation that night deeply impacted what I brought forth and the depth that I brought forth, in Egypt. And so I want to honor you in that. Yeah. So with that, I've done a lot of talking, and I want to invite you to share maybe first a little bit about yourself and how you met the Enneagram. We'll start with the Enneagram. Yeah. Like how you found the Enneagram.
Okay. So the Enneagram came to me in a very interesting time. And in order to say that, maybe I'll just back a little bit before that. So to introduce myself, I have a doctorate in aerospace engineering. I was a space scientist. I was in renewable energies. I have several master's degrees, just for everyone to know the type 5. So
he's well qualified to be a 5.
So I have a master's in engineering, a master's in sustainable energy and sustainability, an MBA in business. And I always had my seeking hobby, let's say. So I used to call it at that time, it was like a hobby. I was always interested in philosophy and in psychology and in metaphysics. But in my engineering work and my life and my business, it was never really on the forefront. But it was always calling. Mm. And it, of course, took me a long time beyond that to realize that everyone has this calling. But for me, it was my personal calling, and I don't know about anyone else. And every now and then this calling would become very strong. And I was like, oh yeah, this is what I love, but just put it aside now, you know, we don't have time. When I finish this, when I finish that. Until around 10, 12 years ago, when this split became excessive. And when I look back at it now, I realize that in this journey for searching for meaning, for purpose, for gnosis, what the Sufis would call ma'rifa, gnosis, this knowing without thinking, this aha, this inspiration. Everything I was doing was not bringing me any closer to that. And it seems I had reached a point in my life where I figured out that this isn't working. Now I'm a professor in the best universities. I'm a director and chief executive in many companies. I have my business. I have a lovely family. I have money. I have, like, everything they promised us is supposed to bring satisfaction is actually creating a bigger gap, a bigger hole. And at the same time, there's always this something since I was young calling me. I don't know what it is. Beautiful. And I had to take a break. You know, this was this time of split. There was a lot of suffering going on. For over 2 years, I had reached a point where I have to do something about this. Yeah. And I remember one day just waking up and deciding I have to take a break. It didn't come like that. Inside me, I thought it's a break, but actually I said, literally, I said, I have to jump. Wow. And it was meant like a jump of faith. It was like jumping off a cliff. Yes. I had no idea what I'm jumping into, where I'm going. I just woke up with my face up into the sky, into the ceiling of the house. I didn't go to work that day. It just didn't make any meaning to me. I said, it's time to jump. And suddenly all the suffering that had been going on for like 2 years suddenly was released. Wow. Wow. And I go to my job where I had been in so much also, you know, suffering inside reflects in suffering in everything outside. Sure. And I go there and everything is calm and we just leave very peacefully, and I leave my jobs and I leave my university positions, and I just wander for like a year and a half. Wow. I had this beautiful place in the mountains of Sinai, very close to, actually in what we would call in Islam the Holy Land, the Holy Valley, actually, Al-Wadi al-Muqaddas, the Holy Valley, which is actually revered by all three monotheistic religions. So there's a beautiful Greek Orthodox monastery there, I think the oldest continuous monastery that has been working all the time, the St. Catherine Monastery. It is revered by the Jewish religion, and it's revered by the Islamic religion. So it is a place where all three religions consider revered and holy, and it is the highest energy by far I know of in Egypt or in the region. So I would just have this little hut in the mountain. I would go there and spend a couple of weeks, come back to my family, go spend a couple of weeks. It was a time I considered of cleaning, something. There was like a lot of dirt that had to be cleaned, the dirt from this corporate life and this struggle that was going on. And it took many months for things to calm down. And once things calmed down, suddenly these models started showing up to me. Wow. So in this contemplation in these mountains, there were reflections, there were also readings. And it's during this time that I discovered, first of all the New Age stuff. And I went to all of that, and NLP and Reiki and constellations and all this. And then I went from that to discovering the two models that would really make the difference for me, the Enneagram and Wilber's work, the integral consciousness work. And of course, the Enneagram came at the perfect time. It was like suddenly I saw it and I was like, aha, that's what I've been looking for.
Wow.
It took my heart from the very first moment. A friend at that time who introduced me to it had just heard about it also a couple of days earlier. So he didn't know about it, but he had the guts to stand up and teach it. You know, a big problem we have in the Enneagram world. He had literally heard about it. He had literally heard about it. No need, but
no, never mind.
He had heard about it the weekend before, and he had now a workshop, a 4-hour workshop, and he got up to sit.
Wait, okay. So did you attend that workshop or did you just read?
I attended. He's a good friend of mine. I used to trust him. But I remember because he's a friend and because I was I am a 5 who at that time knew nothing about himself. I literally, at the end of the course, in front of everyone, stood up. He asked us to act our type. He wanted to see it. And I was the only 5 in the room. I immediately knew my type from the 5 and he knew it. He said, I think you. I said, yeah. So he said, act it out. So I made myself like a philosopher sitting silent. And I told him, now what I say, you just read here, but I'm not saying it out loud. I said, this model looks fascinating, but this guy has no idea what he's talking about.
Oh, that's perfect.
I have to go discover this in front of everyone, of course. And, you know, you asked me to do my type. Well, this is my type. This is exactly what I'm thinking right now.
Right. That's
so it was that moment where I decided I have to focus on this a bit. And that's how I came into it. It just like took me in. Wow. And for several years, for about 2 years, there was not any internet teaching at that time yet. So mostly it was some recordings and recorded courses, and then reaching out to people to just open the speakerphone or a mic in their course. And I mean, sometimes that was acceptance, sometimes it wasn't. But I was like trying to get knowledge from anywhere. Russ Hudson came to Egypt. I attended some of his work. Right. And books and reading until it took me like 2 years until I felt that now I'm starting to figure out what's happening here.
Wow. Beautiful. So yeah, you mentioned Russ Hudson. I was going to ask you who among the Enneagram teachers are other influences for you, if there are others. But also I'd love to hear about the journey. Many 5s I know, you meet the Enneagram, here is another system, right? Like, and the fascination with systems that can go across all 5s, right? And the difference between sort of the system and its very particular expression in you, like its personal impact on your life, right? I mean, granted, the impact on you professionally is linked to your personal experience, right? Because it's about, it's almost like a calling, right? But what about you becoming aware of 5-ish traits? Like what happened to you when that occurred? Yeah.
So definitely seeing it as another system is part of it and will remain part of it. This is, again, how the mind works. It just organizes and classifies and puts things in bullets and makes sense of stuff. This is, again, our power and weakness. Everything is a power.
Yes, that's your superpower, because not all minds work that way.
Exactly. It's our superpower and also our Achilles heel. So it's what we have to be aware of, but also this is what we bring to the world. Yes. So definitely that. But from another side, as I said, I was always seeking, and I had these. So, of course, I'm a Muslim. I'm a practicing Muslim. Always have been. Haven't had any problem with that whatsoever. Just my understandings also of the teachings of Islam and religion have always been evolving and changing and expanding from the very traditional to the mystical, to the, it's always this change in heart and mind. And, my models of stages of heart and stages of mind, I can see them on my journey. And one of the first things I saw in the Enneagram is connecting the spiritual with the material.
Yeah.
It is, I could see, and for some reason, maybe because of my background in my, again, philosophies and psychology background, I could tell suddenly that, okay, this is the human, but this is what they reflect of the divine. And that's why one of my very first writings and teachings was the names of Allah from the Sufi tradition that are channeled through the 9 Enneagram types. So that was a paper I published in an article I published in the Enneagram Monthly in 2018. That was the first time I had the guts to actually put something on the international arena, let's say. It's like, okay, no one has done this, so let's put it out. So immediately I saw the connection between the physical and the spiritual, and I've been developing that over the years. Again, as a model, but also as something that inherently affects me, touches me.
Yeah.
It gives me meaning and purpose. Now I understand, who am I? Why am I here? What am I good at? And what are my challenges? And because of the journey that I've had, I think the effect was quick. It wasn't like there was a struggle. Already everything it was pointing at, I had some sense of, but this frame made the transformation more powerful.
Yes.
Made it easier. I already had the tools to face what I was, well, not what I was, what I am continuously discovering all the time in my time. It's like I can, at every moment, have a capacity to handle something. And then once you go significantly through it, we never really go over anything, but significantly through it, we can start seeing the next layer and the next layer and the next layer.
Yeah. Yeah. So you reminded me that I most often teach the Enneagram as a map of consciousness, right? Not just a map of personality, but a map of the entire realm, like divine mind being another name for what I would call God, right? And so I wondered about, when you described your background, it almost felt like there's this spiritual journey already unfolding that is organic because of your faith and your dedication to your faith. And it almost seems like the Enneagram did help you to map that journey, to name sort of milestone points in that journey that clarified, and again, kind of leaning into, I would say, the high of the 5, that it's not that knowledge is bad. It's not just intellectual knowledge, but it's knowledge, clarity that has embodiment in it. And I know that sometimes for folks I've worked with one-on-one, simply by very precisely naming something that I kind of knew because of the Enneagram, giving it a name, like I helped the person, you could just feel them breathe into their experience in a new way, you know? And so I wondered about the role of that, like the naming along the way that helped clarify, make your journey even more crystal clear, and like allow you to sit in the direct experience more because of it, you know? So, yeah.
You see, naming something is much more than just giving it a label. It is the sign of being conscious of something.
Yeah.
In the story of Adam, I sometimes call it in the myth of the human creation, which is described almost identical in the 3 monotheistic religions, in Islam, in the Quran, the first thing that Allah, God, teaches Adam, according to the text, is that he taught him all the names. Now, in traditional interpretations of this, they say that he gave him language or he gave him the names of stuff, but actually from a consciousness perspective, giving him the names means giving him the ability to identify and separate things from each other. And this is a sign of becoming self-conscious, becoming conscious of yourself and conscious of the world. Now you have a subjective and an objective, and you separate the subjective from the objective. So being able to name things allows them to have a reality. Now you can deal with them. That's why, for example, when we deal with our emotions, we need to be able to name what's happening within us, to see it, to identify it. It's not just giving a label. It's not about judging. It's about seeing it as it is, creating an existence for it. And our journey in life, I call it the journey from unity to multiplicity. This is the fall of Adam, which isn't actually a fall. It's a fall towards higher consciousness. But this is the fall into separation. And this happens unconsciously to everyone. And then the return to unity, which happens with conscious dedication and work. So it's from unity to multiplicity and back. And this entering this mature sense of multiplicity, having a mature ego, a healthy ego, is essential for a healthy spiritual journey back into unity. And the Enneagram and the integral consciousness models gave me the names, gave me the understanding. I could see when I'm sometimes asked, why the Enneagram? I sometimes summarize it in one sentence. It gave me a heart.
Wow. Wow. Yeah. Say more about that. I want to, because of course I've already met you after you found your
Still finding it.
and a passionate
Not
heart
that easy.
that. Yes.
It's not that easy for a 5. I'm still finding it, but
it might go in the closet every once in a while, but you know, you might know which closet, you know. So yeah, like I would love to hear, like, what was that experience like for you?
I mean, when you look at the 5 on the Enneagram, we're just on the border of the heart center. So we're not too far, but we understand everything from the head, and the heart, the emotions don't have a place in the head. You know, 5s have a gate, literally. By the way, this is metaphorically and literally. We have like an energetic gate at this place. When emotions start to move, usually 5s feel stuck here. It's like, and this is coming from as if I don't want the emotions to go up and cloud my thinking.
Messy.
The gate is closed. It will mess up, and I will lose my respect. I will lose my wisdom. I will, again, I'm talking like what's happening inside the 5. So unconsciously, we block here. We can even run out of breath because I don't want this to affect. I want my mind to be clear. But wisdom requires the balance and not the balance, at least the activation of all 3 centers.
Right.
So one of the main changes that happens to the 5 is that when they suddenly realize what this is for, what the emotions are for, their role in life, why they're here, once they, at least the mind accepts that these are important, which again, what the Enneagram does, then they slowly allow this gate to open. Now it's overwhelming. It's frightening. We have no idea what's going to happen. We'll lose our confidence. We'll lose our precision. We will lose our sharpness. So it has to be a journey that's taken slowly and confidently, and, you know, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, until a 5 can, to some extent, have this flow, this flow of energy between these 2 centers.
Yes. And I didn't want to interrupt you. You were in such flow, but for those who are only listening and not watching, I want to note that Dr. Khaled was basically sharing this constriction in his throat center in that area, and then describing how sort of everything below that, you know, sort of the heart and that, the mess, the messiness of all that, you know, that there's something constricted in the throat that keeps that from coming up and expressing, and then even informing, because what you're saying is something I very much align with. It's not like we have to be exactly balanced in all 3 centers all the time. It's that there's an energetic freedom that allows for the appropriate amount of information from each of the centers to come in a skillful and wise way, right? And where the intellect, you know, again, I'm going up in my head here, it might say, no, you know, all that heart stuff, even all that gut stuff might impede my clarity. What you have come to understand is that it gives you a more profound clarity and wisdom and knowing, right? So that you have permission now. The 5's type structure that usually says no to that part has permission to feel, to access, I would say, all those parts, to be informed by that in your living, right? Yeah, beautiful.
And it is because of this block that happens at the neck, that when fives are very fixated, they can seem like, blobbing heads with no body. It's just like a head moving around because all the energy is stuck up here.
Yes.
The body can actually start becoming small. It is ignored. Fives in fixation feel that the body is actually like a burden. I don't want that. This is the typical, brain in a jar connected to a computer. But as the fives open up to discover their inner self more, they realize that the way to knowing ourselves is actually from the center, from the core, from the heart. And this gateway has to be open. This can bring knowledge. The head can only bring knowledge. But wisdom has to access all three centers. And the gut is even further down. That even takes more work from the five to access. That's even further and deeper down.
Right. I want to talk about the gut in a second, but I want to ask you, and now I realize maybe I should get Natalia, your wife, to come on and give her a little rebuttal or like just what do you think about what he just said? Is it legit? Okay. No, but so I'm curious, all that said, how do you think, maybe coming from an outside perspective, how do you think you showed up differently in your life as a result of this?
So I'll give you an example to tell you how I showed up differently. So again, when I discovered, as I told you, that period, a couple of years when I discovered all the new age and all the new stuff, and I took a couple of coaching courses at the time, and the coach at that time told me, hey, you can now ready to coach. Okay, I wasn't really sure about it, but let's try. And I would do one session or two sessions maximum, and I would be so exhausted and tired. I don't want to talk to anyone for a week. And I remember maybe after 5-6 sessions, not more than that, I mean, over a couple of weeks, I went out to the admin who was sitting outside organizing the sessions. And I told him, look, it seems there are two types of clients. Clients who have a problem and want it to be solved, and those are very few. And clients who just want to talk and waste my time. I don't want to see any of those.
Oh my God. Fantastic.
I literally found myself when I started to ground in the coaching session, what's going on here? Why am I getting so exhausted? I realized that as soon as the client starts talking from inside, mentioning their emotions, giving their story, it's not coming from here anymore. It's like they want to share.
Wow.
I realized, and this is how I saw it. It was visually. I saw, like this garage door just suddenly goes down, chuck, and blocks the connection. Now I am like protected from that nonsense.
Humanity.
Doesn't make sense. It's just a waste of time. It's just blah, blah, blah. It's like nonsense. It's like trick. And all my energy was going into protecting myself and my field from this barrage of nonsense.
That's fantastic.
Years later, with a lot of work and understanding, the more I opened up to my own inner world, the more I started to understand, to have empathy, to have compassion. Again, this is the Enneagram opening all this up, understanding the human being, understanding the person, what's happening inside, the role of emotions, the role of sensations, the role of the head, and how we can go up and down, how we're affected. All of that understanding and knowledge created a connection.
Yeah.
Slowly by slowly, I hold the garage, wait a bit until it closes, until the door just totally disappeared. It doesn't exist anymore. I can stay, and accordingly, I can stay for a whole day just in coaching sessions and actually get energized because I'm connecting to the soul.
Yeah.
It's no longer an emotion or a thought or a story. It's a human soul in front of you, and you're really listening. There's a channeling process happening between you and the other.
Yeah.
And this is the heart that I call that the Enneagram brought. It's like I can be with a person, not with a story, not with facts.
Yes. Oh, beautiful. So you just described something I think is important, especially for the listeners who are newer to the Enneagram. In the conflict styles of the Enneagram, ones, fives, and threes, you and I, are in the same triad, right? Which is the rational competency triad, which is fix it. If there's a situation, like, go in your head, set aside your feelings and fix it, is the default, of those types. I would say even more so in a way, right? In fiveness of that head. I mean, what you described is, I think, this beautiful journey in which you cannot honor others' souls in that complexity, in their heart space, until you have welcomed yours. And what you describe with that gate in your neck, to me, is like the garage door, where you open the garage door to your own fullness of soul as part of your journey, right? That then enables you to begin to even honor that in another. If you're that we as professionals, like for me, I have a deep belief that I cannot take anyone where I haven't been. And if I'm judgmental about anger, if I'm judgmental about fear, if I'm judgmental about sadness, and I damp that down, then I cannot hold space for any of my clients in an authentic way, right? Because I want them to move along, right? Get to it and fix this situation, right? As opposed to even to know that feelings are part of the journey, that they're not something to get over, but they're actually a part of just the experience of humanity. And the more that I can hold space, again, not just feelings, because there's an overemphasis, right? That where it's oh, it's not just about being on our heart. It's like a wise heart. There's wisdom here. It's about using your intellect too. It's about having your gut access as well, right? And that the more you can embody that in yourself, then you can hold space for that not just in your clients, but I'm guessing in your personal life as well. I keep going back to your personal life to see what great news we might hear.
And the beauty is when you access that space of openness, of wisdom, of connection, you realize that even this automatic reaction of fix it or leave, it's like, I told you the process and you're still giving me the stories. Okay, the garage door is a way of leave, of withdrawal, so it's fix it. You realize that I wasn't fixing it for them. I'm actually fixing it because I want to get over it, because I can't bear this. It's also a defensive mechanism. I'm not, even in the fixing, I'm not seeing their problem. I'm seeing my problem of having to face this.
You can see the hand gestures. Disdain. Yeah. Historically, but there's, thank God for evolution of consciousness. Right. Oh,
yeah.
Oh God.
I actually find it very important to tell these stories, because they tell people that it's a process, it's a journey. We all pass through stations and we all fall back and then move ahead again. It's like no one reaches anywhere. It's a continuous journey. It's hard and it's beautiful. It's worth the pain and effort that you go through, and it doesn't get any easier, but it gets more and more beautiful.
Lovely. Related to that, we have a few more minutes, but I want to make sure I get this in before we close our time together. Related to that, I'd love to hear what counsel or advice you might have for the 5 in particular, who is new to the journey, just knowing what the inside looks like and what your barriers are to, listening to other teachers, having scorn for the rest of humanity, how to overcome that to be open. Yeah.
So first of all is to understand yourself, understand what you're afraid of, understand that this illusion of running out of energy, this feeling of incapability to face the world, is just an illusion. I like to make fun sometimes with 5s and tell them, we've never seen a 5 falling down on the side of the road because their battery ran out. Yet the 5s live with a continuous sense of, my battery's about to run out. And this is not something that's going to go away. It's just going to lose its effect on you. It will always be there. It's part of the 5. But you realize that that's not true. And the more you actually participate in the world, the more the battery starts to charge up better, the more the feeling of running out of energy decreases. But take the journey slowly.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing.
Mm.
Second thing is that don't try to rationalize feelings and emotions.
Mm. Mm.
You need to feel feelings and emotions. You need to be in them.
Mm.
They don't make sense. And when you say emotions don't make sense, that is true, because they're not supposed to make sense.
Right.
They're supposed to be felt. They're supposed to be experienced. So don't be afraid of that. Get to know them slowly. I always say, wahda wahda, chut chut, slowly, slowly. In Arabic, wahda wahda, even my students put it on a big piece of, plaque. It became like a motto. Wahda wahda. People, when they get to know about the Enneagram, everyone in their own way, they want to reach the destination.
Yes.
It's like, how can I be good?
Yes.
The 3, so what am I supposed to achieve? And the 5, what am I supposed to understand? How can I know it? No, it's not about that. Just take the journey slowly, open up to the heart, and open up to the world. Move inward instead of backward. And allow yourself from time to time to take a break, to move out. Use the head. No one is telling you stop intellectualizing, but wisdom comes from connecting to the heart and connecting to the gut.
Yeah. Wow. So beautiful. And I just love this last thing you said, move inward instead of backward, right? For a 3, it might be instead of forward. Move in and down instead of forward, but inward instead of backward. Now, so that comes to sort of my final question. And I think every 5 will want to know this. There's the how question, right? And so I'm very interested in hearing what spiritual practices have helped you, whether you're doing it now or whether it was earlier on in your journey, but if there's a spiritual practice or practice that has supported you, I'd love to hear about it. Yeah.
So let's separate between the religious and the spiritual.
Yes.
So the religious, as I said, I am a practicing Muslim, and I've had lots of my spiritual work in my life came from my religious practice. But I also had the Sufi side, and even on the Sufi side, as a 5, it was more of the intellectual Sufism than the experiential Sufism. But over again, the last 10, 15 years, I have started to taste every spiritual path. And I've started to find the beauty and the wisdom in every seeker of truth. I love a quote from Houston Smith, where he says, any path that has brought peace and serenity to millions of people must have truth and beauty in it. So just by realizing how people have been able to make meaning and purpose and to evolve, and tasting from every beautiful fruit of spirituality, continuously expands the heart and expands the soul and touches the spirit. There's a beautiful poem from Ibn Arabi. So Ibn Arabi is one of the most revered Sufi intellectual mystics and also practicing mystic, and one of the main philosophers of Islam, more of a mystic than a philosopher. One of his poems is, I'll say it in Arabic and I'll translate it into English. لقد كنت قبل اليوم أنكر صاحبي إذا لم يكن ديني إلى دينه دان. Before today, I used to blame my companion if my religion differed from his religion. وقد صار قلبي قابلا كل صورة. But my heart has become capable of accepting every form. فمرعى لغزلان ودير لرهبان. It is a pasture for gazelles. It is a monastery for Christian monks. وبيت لأوثان وكعبة طائف. And the Kaaba for the pilgrims, and the tablets for the Torah. and the house even of the idols, and the Kaaba for the pilgrims, وألواح توراة ومصحف قرآني, and the tablets of the Torah and the book and the pages of the Quran. أدين بدين الحب أن توجهت ركائبه. My religion is the religion of love. Wherever the caravans of love take me. فالحب ديني وإيماني. For love is my religion, love is my faith.
Oh, my heart. So wow. So beautiful. I'm so grateful to have this, if only for me. If only for me. I'm so grateful to have this time with you, to share these pearls of wisdom and of beauty. I could just picture, like, I felt like flowers were blossoming as you spoke, just, and the final thing I think I'll say is, well, first of all, thank you so much for gifting your time to me and to our listeners, to offer the graciousness of your personal as well as your professional journey. I can't believe I didn't share that that Dr. Khaled is actually the founder of Enneagram Egypt, which was the first IEA accredited Enneagram school in the Middle East. I mean,
Middle East and North Africa, yeah.
I mean, ridiculous. Like that's phenomenal. So it goes from like this inner life to this massive outer life, impacting so many people. And I know that when I've attended your seminars at the IEA global conferences, they have been packed, and just packed with information as well, and packed, but more packed with presence, I believe, presence. Yeah. And so I'm so grateful for that, and so we'll have all of your websites and all the links on here on the podcast, so people who are interested can come find out more about you and about your school and all the teachers who teach in your school. But I want to say that the last thing that I heard from you is, as you were sharing about your journey, I hear a lot of fives in the earlier stages. There is that sort of like scoffing, there's a distancing. And so I might frame it as this, not that, right? Like there's a no, there's a this, not that. There's a picking, there's a choosing, there's a focusing in. And what you're describing is a shift to this and that. Yeah, this and that. Go ahead. We could talk forever.
And if I would say it in 5 language, how we see it,
yeah,
it's actually at the start, neither this nor that.
Beautiful.
It's like I'm standing outside here and looking, and I will decide what comes in and what doesn't come in. It's like nothing. It's, do you make sense or not? It's neither this nor that.
Okay. I'm gonna amend my. Okay, maybe that's the early 5. But
that's the early
5
yeah.
that starts to name is like this, not that, right? That to me is the beginning of naming. But naming starts to transcend naming. There's like naming and then unnaming. There's spaciousness and there's freedom, right? What you described to me is there's space for beauty and there's space for mystery, yeah, in the evolution.
This has been a real pleasure, Nhien. I always love having these talks with you. Again, this flow that happens just like that evening.
We'll have to continue this.
I'm so looking forward to more of this. Thank you so much for inviting me here. It's really a pleasure always talking to you.
Thank you. And look forward to the next time. Take care. Bye, everybody.